Caddo Parish School Superintendent. Doc, welcome back. How you doing this morning?
Oh my God! To use the word "smart" and Dr. Goree in the same sentence. Wow.
Let me
Not
start.
the same sentence. There was a period there, I guess.
Let me start here because
You're
I know
smart.
this is going through your brain. Just when you thought you had all the ducks in a row, just when you thought things were going to be okay, just when you thought everything was going to work out, just when you thought the plan was in place. ... Right? ...
Yeah. Well, the last 18 months has taught us nothing. It's taught us how to be flexible, and not to make good decisions, but just make some decisions. I guess we'll go with that today.
I want to ask you this one elephant question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm not for masks. I'm just saying that to be hypothetical. I'm not
Okay.
for masks. I've got a second grader. I'm telling my child, you go to school, you don't wear that mask. You tell that teacher your mama told you don't have to wear the mask. What happens with that child?
Well, that situation will be no different from what happened 5 years ago when a child comes to school and does something that's acceptable at home that's not acceptable at school. There is a progressive process there where we will, work with the child through the issue and appropriate consequences if that's what it comes to. But again, families have always understood that the rules of the home are different from the rules of the school. And
But are they sent home immediately? Do you call mom?
What is
I don't
appropriate
think
consequences? That sounded a little foreboding.
I think let's look at this from the perspective of a kid comes to school and says, "I'm not taking my hat off because I like wearing my hunting hat in school."
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the teacher will first have a conversation with that student around why it's not appropriate to wear the hat to school, make them very aware of what the rules are. Then you would progress through if the teacher can't handle it at the classroom level, will involve the administration. Of course, parents will be communicated with every step of the way. But there are so many things that happen, as we work with children on really learning to follow rules to be successful in life before we get to saying you're just going home. A couple things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Goree,
and I'll be very honest with you. We've done this before. We did this all last year. I could count on one hand the number of problems that escalated to the point of a child being suspended over a mask. The children will rise to the occasion like they always do. And I hope the parents support that.
Doc, Bessie is meeting later today. They are going to at least consider the idea of attempting to override the governor's mask mandate and return the decision-making power to local school superintendents. You got to have thought about it. You can tell us what you would do or not do. That's totally up to you. But are you ready for the weight of that decision if it comes to you?
Right. What I'll tell you is that we have made a commitment and we've presented to our board and to our community that we will go to school next week and we will be in mask and we will continue to follow the advice of our local health professionals and we meet with them constantly around this topic. And we too, no one's just dying to put a mask on. So when it is an opportunity to not mask and to provide education to as many children in person as we can, we will take advantage of that. But as of date, I don't see anything changing with what we do in our system, especially considering the governor has a mask mandate in place until September 1st.
Is Dr. Goree's prime directive to go Star Trek on you? Is the prime directive in-person learning?
Absolutely. That's my whole goal. And if you look at what we need to do for our children, I pray that everyone's goal is for us to get as many children in the safest environment in front of a caring, loving teacher as we possibly can. And that's the goal, and that's what we need to focus on. I think there are two extremes to this whole conversation. There is no mask, and then there's all virtual. We don't see either of those being what's best for children today as a system, and that's why we'll return to school in mask, in person, and hoping that we really create the safest environment we can for kids. And again, that's not based on what I think. That's based on what our medical experts who are very close to this virus in our community are advising.
Doc, you told us a couple of weeks ago that about 5% of Caddo Parish students had opted for virtual learning. In listening and watching the school board meeting yesterday, it seems like that number is now going to grow. The deadline to apply for virtual learning was the end of May. We all know our circumstances have changed. Are we going to open that back up for more people to enroll in virtual learning?
What we've done is families that are interested in virtual have been contacted, and we have a list and understand that in a system of this size, we are, right at 38,000 students, 55 schools. For us to make shifts in those teachers to do virtual, because we are still committed to our teachers not having to do the synchronous model where that's when you're doing virtual and in person at the same time. So we really are having to work through where will we have those surplus teachers so that we know who we're going to shift to the virtual platform. But we are committed to meeting the needs of those families that have asked for virtual since that deadline has passed. And again, though, I will stress, though, that we are a firm belief that the best educational opportunities are in the classroom with the teacher.
You will make accommodations, though, for those who just don't want to send their kids to school, correct?
We are looking at, and even in the virtual numbers that we did in May, we have some space to add some students. If you look at our high school students, it's pretty easy. We have a virtual school. You go to the virtual school. But we are working on how do we increase seats at the elementary level. And that's something, again, that's really based on who shows up and where they show up in a system of this size, because you have to then look at where those teachers, we hadn't budgeted for any additional spots, so we're going to have to look at what we have to make this work for families.
We got a question on our Shreveport Security Systems message board for you. Has Caddo lost any students to Texas? Do you have a way to track that because of the mask policy?
Oh, I would be really surprised if we lost kids to Texas because of the mask policy. I think people may have moved to Texas just because they had got a different job or for a different reason. And again, that does support the decline in population that we've seen in our community over the last few years. And that's why we cannot just run out and decide we're going to hire 10 new teachers to do virtual. We have to look at what we actually have and make sure that we're as efficient as possible with the personnel that we already have in place.
Speaking of virtual, and Aaron was explaining to us earlier, pardon me, that you're going to do it totally separate. In other words, some teachers doing all virtual and then just the teachers in the classroom so they can have better contact with the students. Is staffing there, scheduling there a problem? How's that working out for you?
Oh, it's most challenging because, again, we have teacher shortages for in-person teachers, so then finding those virtual teachers certainly does create a unique challenge. Our goal, though, is to have separate teachers for our virtual learners from our in-person learners. And, again, we're going to be really creative with how we build this and make this work, but that's something that we are committed to doing. But very challenging, especially in a system of this size.
In wrapping up, you sound ready. You sound like, well, it's just what I do. Throw it at me. I've got it. We've got this. You sound very confident, and I mean that in the best way.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. And please know that I get up and do this every day for children. And again, if there is nothing to give me energy to do it, it's the children. And we will continue to push forward and really try and pray towards a downturn in this Delta variant of the virus so that we can resume life as we've normally known it. But I really appreciate those in the community that are working with us until we get to that point. The beauty of our community was evident last night from our board speakers because it was a diversity in thoughts, and they were very different. And I ask people to understand that we as a system have to try and meet those needs of all community members and not just one body of them. So that does create a unique challenge. But as long as we appreciate the diversity of our community, we should get through this and probably be much stronger than many communities that don't look like us.